Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to SF Live. I'm your host, Myrna Lim. Tonight we have a very special guest. We have Warren Hinkle, a main feature in San Francisco politics and social scenes for the last, I wouldn't want to age the guy, but a few decades. And everybody knows him, and he knows everybody. And we're trying to look at what's going to happen in San Francisco in year 2010. So we'll try to get him to look at his crystal ball and tell us what we could expect. Who are the players in San Francisco politics? Who's out? Who's in? What can we expect to happen? And then, of course, we would like to know if there's anything that we would benefit people like us, you and me, and him, and the ordinary guy on the street, especially in the backdrop of this economic crisis we're experiencing. So, anyway, welcome, Warren. How are you?
Okay.
Anyway, first of all, I'm sorry about your dog. Last time we
thank
had
you.
Warren
Yeah.
in the show, and he came in with his dog, but his dog passed, and so anyway, you will see. Usually, people see Warren with his dog, but today you don't. So
I feel very funny walking around without a leash in my hand. Unnatural.
anyway, so welcome. How are you?
I'm well, aside from my dog isn't so well, but I'm well.
All right. So anyway, so what do you think? What do you think is going to happen in San Francisco? You were talking about a guy who I know, Mr. Joe O'Donoghue.
Yeah.
That's a good. What a way to start off a conversation. Joe O'Donoghue is one of the most well-known players, developers, quasi-politicians, movers and shakers in San Francisco.
Reformers.
Reformers, okay? He calls them reformers. But anyway, Joe is one of those guys, either you love the guy or you hate him or one of those things. But I like him. He's one of those guys you don't want to be on his bad side. But anyway, what is he planning to do?
Well, Joe's been working in Oakland for the last 4 or approximately years, developing over there, and has got quite involved in Oakland politics, and has changed a few things around the way the game's played in Oakland. And he's now back. He's always been a resident of San Francisco, but he's now back in San Francisco politics, outside his original RBA, basically the Irish Builders together, and has formed a new organization called Cobra.
A cobra, all
Yeah.
right.
Of mostly builders and a few other people. Had a very large meeting a couple weeks ago at the Irish Cultural Center, and they're going to war with the Board of Supervisors on some of the issues relating to applying housing laws to the post rent control, basically to the post 1979 units.
Oh,
Rent
wow,
control
okay.
previously only applied up to everything built before 1979.
Now, John Avalos, didn't he
Yes.
put something before
Yeah.
the board? And so you can talk about that too
Yeah.
as well.
Anyway, that's going to be a fight. But what's interesting about O'Donoghue's return to town, if you like, it's the first thrust in what's going to be, I'm pretty sure, the biggest battle, biggest hoo-ha-ha of at least this coming year. And that's going to be almost an unrelenting war and exposure, I guess you'd say, of the nonprofit operations in the city.
Okay.
They're exempt from the Sunshine Law.
Oh,
Nobody
wow.
really knows how much city and taxpayer money they get.
Right.
There are exceptions to the rule, but most of them are involved politically.
Right.
They operate on at least partial taxpayers' funds.
Wow.
They're active in campaigns.
Exactly. My God.
And they duplicate, for a lot of the money they receive from the city, they duplicate city services that are provided by city workers represented by SEIU. But they're in sort of an unholy alliance with SEIU
Wow.
to stand on the side of maintaining the size of city workers. And of course, dealing with this largeness of city workers, the largest proportion of any city in the country,
Right.
larger than New York, any city. to the size of population, not to mention what services are rendered, doesn't so much require firing everybody. It requires a serious look at the civil service rules and the job classifications,
Right.
which are rigid, also redundant, and make many more people involved in things or doing work that really isn't work because they could do, and most of them want to do, a lot more during the day.
Right.
But to keep the number of employees up, SEIU, because they get the dues, have fought any civil service reclassification so it's more efficient.
Right. Right.
Now, their allies in that are sort of the nonprofit empires, which...
Well, I mean, I thought he's friends with Randy Shaw, who is the executive director of Tenderloin Neighborhood Corporation. Right?
O'Donoghue he carries that Frankensteinian weight with him, help Randy Shaw start his website, so some years back, right? But Shaw's relation, even with people he fights, was usually pretty good. He's a very amiable guy in that sense, but he knows who his enemies are. And Randy Shaw is involved in the heavily in the nonprofit enterprises. Now that you brought him up, it's an interesting example of what goes on with these nonprofits.
Right.
There's a study ongoing which will be released in the beginning of the year about evictions in San Francisco.
Right.
Right. And this study started about 1980, and there were about 5,000 evictions over from 1980 on, and of those 5,000 evictions that were studied, more than 70% of them were nonprofit entities doing the evicting. Not your average
really?
landlord, not your San Giacomo, not your big owner, non-profits.
Wait. You're talking about this nonprofit housing corporations that's being funded by the city?
Yes.
Whoa.
They have the highest record of evictions versus private landlords.
Wow.
That's an astonishing figure. I know. When I first heard it, I didn't believe
incredible.
it. I said, show me the study, for God's sakes. And it's still ongoing.
Right.
But sure enough, they're stacking up the papers, and of these 5,000 studied,
Wow.
It's like 70-something% of them are nonprofits. And you got to say, what's going on here? These people, what are they doing evicting people? And Randy Shaw's Tenderloin Housing Clinic, it's an example of how these nonprofits grow. Started out doing excellent work, the Lord's work, providing legal services to poor people who were having mostly trouble with their landlords and defending them in court and stopping evictions.
Right.
Over the course of time, they've become, under the name Tenderloin Housing Clinic or another entity, I'm not sure, but they've become a large landlord themselves, managing small hotels, other properties, doing things, and they have an astonishing amount of evictions. So on one hand, they're representing people, right, who are being evicted by private landlords. On the other hand, they're a nonprofit doing the evictions themselves. You know, it's absurd.
And yet they're supposed to represent the proletariat, right?
Yeah, and that's an example that came up. I didn't come here to go after Randy Shaw, but yeah, I mean, but that's just an example.
No, but they all are like that. See, that's the thing. It's just like a lot of these nonprofits. They're so self-righteous. That's the thing. You know, it's like, you know, they're not pragmatists. It's like, you know, their thinking is either you're with me or against me. You know, so it's kind of an interesting scenario.
They represent almost a shadow government in the city.
Jeez,
a parallel, unseen government.
Wow.
They're involved in politics at every level. From one level, the Catholic Church, which has known, and Catholic Church is not the problem with these nonprofit operations, but they're involved in politics too. They have the church's position on things. And a serious constitutional issue arises in the Catholic Church's part,
well, I'm
right?
Catholic, so.